Hi, this is Mike with Bangert. Welcome back to the Sage Intacct Advanced Tax Setup and Configuration. In this session, we're going to talk specifically about setting up the tax details, really the guts of where all the information is coming from and how it's calculating, percentages, GL accounts. A lot of this is going to reside in these tax details. So as far as our outline that you've been going through, we're really specifically talking about module-specific setup, tax details. And why this one is under module-specific setup is because, the tax details are not shared between the order entry and the purchasing module. So one of the first things to consider is if you do need to track taxes in both order entry and purchasing, you need to define your tax details with the IDs unique so that you can use them in both areas. If you try and set up a tax details ID in order entry and the same one in purchasing, it will not let you. It will recognize the ID and say it already exists. So if you're going to be using both modules to track tax on the receivable side and the payable side, you need to set up your IDs accordingly. If you're just, let's say, charging sales tax on the customer side and we don't have to worry about the purchasing side, then you could be a little more simplistic in your IDs. And just to kind of note, accounts receivable and order entry can share the same IDs, so you don't need unique ones for those. It's just if you're using order entry and purchasing. So this session, we're going to talk specifically about tax details. Let's go ahead and jump over to the system and take a look at it. So again, going back to my advanced tax help menu that we talked about earlier, I'm really in now down to this tax detail area. So there's a good recap of kind of what we just talked about, where they shared. And you can kind of see here that receivables and order entry share, but purchasing does not. Okay. So we'll go through here and tell you what you should be doing inside the system and give you field details. So always use this as a reference. So in this sample, let's go through and set up, let's say we need to charge accounts receivable sales tax. So let's go over to our entity. I'm at top level, and let's go specifically to order entry. So in order entry under setup, there's going to be a tax session. So in the last section, we talked about authorities. And next in the line is going to be to set up a list of our detailed taxes. So let's go ahead and click on that. And, talking about, hey, if I'm using the order entry and purchasing, this is the ID that needs to be unique. So in this case, I'm using just a state and a county for my receivable side. And if I want to use order purchasing, I can actually set up a unique one for that afterwards. But basically your detail ID, again, would recommend kind of keep it consistent with your contact tax groups. So for example, I've created an ID called Iowa Des Moines, and it's for Iowa Des Moines County sales tax. Some people in the description put the percent as well. But if you go ahead and hit add, these are the fields that you're going to get to set up. The detailed ID is required. And then the general ledger account is required as well. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the Des Moines one that we already have set up. I'll click edit. And here's where we've given it an ID. We've labeled it with a description. And then there's different fields that are required based on your needs. But in this sample, include in taxable amount the full amount. And the percent that someone is going to get charged for Iowa Des Moines is this percent. So you're tying the percent directly to the tax detail. Now, in some states, it requires you to break them out, the state portion and the county portion. So you can set up a state portion if you'd like. And then you can set up a separate for a county. So let's say Des Moines is 4% and the state portion for Iowa is 3%. You can set up a detailed ID called Iowa State and put the 3% in there. And then Des Moines is 4%. And then we can combine them later on when we build our schedules. But if you don't need to break them out and you can report on it the whole thing based on Des Moines. We're going to say 7% in this scenario. And then right here under your GL account, what is the payable account for this tax ID? So you may have a sales tax payable Iowa. If you have multiple states, you might have a GL account linked to each state. So you go ahead and fill that out there. If you don't have the sales tax payable account, you need to add it on the fly. You're able to do that as well. So you're going to link it to the GL account, and then you're also going to link it to the tax authority. So that's why we needed to have the tax authorities set up ahead of time. So here's my list. There's those 3 we saw in the earlier sessions. So this is going to be linked to state of Iowa, and it's active. So once you fill that out, you'll click save, and you can do your next one. Now, what's nice is you can duplicate. So if you have a bunch of counties, these can be imported as well. So if you get into several states, several counties, you can download the templates and import these. For more information on how to do that or assistance with that, check out our YouTube page for videos on that information, or reach out to us as well in the comments and we'll get you that information. So we're going to continue entering it manually. What you can do is once you set up the first one, you get it right, you can come into edit and view, and you are able to click the duplicate button here. So then you would give it a unique ID, change the description, and if you're doing multiple, the authority can stay the same, and then you can change the percent if needed. So you can get these keyed in pretty quickly, and you're just really going to go through all the different scenarios in the system. So one of the things that we talked about in the contact tax groups is these Des Moines exempt areas. So I'm going to want to set a scenario up for that because this is how it's going to grab the rate. So I can set it up where if they are in the contact tax group of Iowa exempt Des Moines, they can pull in this detail, which actually is set up to report the same, state of Iowa, this sales tax payable, but with a 0%. Okay, so you're going to set up all the different scenarios that you might need. And again, testing and deployment, set up a few different options here, test it through, and then once it's good to go, continue on with the setup. So in this scenario, I have Des Moines, Johnson. I do have a non-taxable sales coded here as well. You can set one of those up as well, and we'll show you how that plays into effect. And you're going to set up all those different areas. So let's say I did also need to track tax on the purchasing side. Let's jump over to purchasing and show you how you set one of those up. So under purchasing, the setups are going to be the same as far as the workflow that we talk about. So I'm going to go into details. Ignore these ones. This is just ones that I had left over for some other testing. But let's add a new one here. And if I tried to call it that same name, Iowa -DMOIN, and we'll call it, let's just call it, I'm just going to type it in. We'll give it a percent, and GL counts 21, sales tax payable, and it's going to go to state of Iowa. Okay. When I click save, I'm going to get an error, and that error is going to say, hey, there's already an ID set up with that. You can't call it the same name. So I'm going to go back, and you need to give it a unique identifier. So sometimes I usually recommend using the initials from the module you're in, either PO Des Moines or maybe something like, another dash or something like that to separate it out. And then you can kind of do that as well. Okay. So if you are considering order entry and purchasing, you need to do it in both areas, break those details out accordingly so you're able to establish what type of tax detail. Is it a purchasing tax detail or a order entry tax detail? As far as everything else goes, that's going to be the same that we did on the receivable side, on the order entry side, except for the fact when we get into the sales use tax section, which we'll cover at the end on what you can do for that. So once you have your tax details set up, basically, if we go back to our help The next thing is we're going to go and actually start building schedules, which will be in the next session right after this. So if you have any questions on the tax details or any comments, please key them in this section here, and like and subscribe as always. The help does go in, just to give you a note, into the importing as well down here. That's pretty nice. But great. We look forward to seeing you in the next session on setting up our tax schedules. Talk to you soon.